Hi and welcome to my channel. My name is Isabella Young and I'd like to thank all my subscribers. I'm very grateful that I have an opportunity to share with you some of the natural beauty that I'm blessed to be surrounded by, and also some of the information about optimizing health and living as a sovereign being that I share every now and again. So thank you for your support. In today's video, I'm going to tell the story of what I learned after I escaped from a Messianic cult. It's a wild ride, and I will be talking about things that usually make people uncomfortable. I'll be talking about brainwashing and child sexual abuse, pedophilia, murder, demon possession, Satanism, and my invitation is that if these make you uncomfortable, to just be with that, because the reason why we're seeing so much evil and violence in the world is because people have denied the existence of evil on this planet, decided that it couldn't be that evil, that people couldn't be that bad, that demonic possession wasn't real. And that attitude, that approach has allowed evil to flourish. So I'm all about looking evil straight in the face, which I have, and exposing evil, because when we do that, we can bring about the end of all that's evil on earth. But when we pretend it doesn't exist, turn our backs, we're apathetic, and then the evil's just going to flourish. The other thing is that a lot of the information that I am sharing, I only found out in the years since I left the cult. It's been 15 years now, and it's taken me that long to get to this place where I can tell my story. And while it won't make sense to people who hear it, like, why didn't I get out, or why didn't I go to the police? Basically, I was mind fucked. I was mind fucked, and it started early on. My mother was a devout atheist, and she hated God, and she despised religions and people who are religious. She said religions were a crutch for humanity, and that she looked down upon people. And so I grew up with this superior attitude to people, and just a contempt for God. I spat the word out with all the venom I could muster. So I will be talking about God, and there's no persona. God is all that is, source, creation, and I'm using that word because I didn't for so long, so I've come to terms with, and I will be using that word, but I'm not religious. In fact, all religions are cults. So that's what I can see now that I left the cult. I can see other cults. So I've got this superior attitude, and I was a bit of a party girl. My mother was an alcoholic as well, so there was a lot of drinking, and she had an affair, and that broke up two families, and we lived with her new husband and his 3 children, which were about the same age as me and my brother, and it was really toxic. There was a lot of fighting and even physical fights, and while it looked good on the outside, we had material wealth. We had trip holidays, overseas holidays, skiing holidays. I had a horse and tennis lessons, so it looked good on the outside, but it was a really toxic situation. I escaped by going to university, and I was studying to be a physical education teacher and an outdoor education teacher, and I met when I met the instructor of it was the final year of college, and I was doing rock climbing and skiing and canoeing and all that sort of stuff, and the instructor of the rock climbing course, his name's Barry Young, and when we first met, I had this electricity go through my body. That's kind of just a word to use. I can't really describe it, but I've never had it since. And there was a magnetism between us that it was undeniable. And he was married, so we went through the divorce process and then came together and started living the dream life. I always wanted to live on a couple of acres with chickens and fruit trees and a horse, and we found a place, and we had a son, and I was doing a PhD in outdoor education and mental health, and he was working in the corporate field using outdoor adventure activities for team building and corporations, and he was riding that wave. He was the first company to break through and do that work in Australia. So I went off for work one day, and I found out I was about 3 months pregnant with our second child. So I got a knock on the door about 10 o'clock from a local policeman and a neighbour, and I was told that he passed away at work. Apparently he just wasn't where he was supposed to be, and they found him in his car, and he was blue. His partner worked on him. He's a paramedic, but he was long gone. And I knew at that moment that my dream of a family on a farm and self-sufficient, I knew it was gone. There was no way I could run that place on my own, and I wanted to die anyway. You know, I really did. I loved him so much. I still do. And I had a child, and I was pregnant, so I couldn't really die. You know, I couldn't take myself away, because I had these 2 other lives that I was responsible for. So I went on a quest, and it lasted years. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where was home. Nowhere felt like home, and I was just in excruciating pain. I did courses, and I did rebirthing, and that was body work, and so I was doing a lot of things to help, because otherwise I would have taken myself out. And Barry and I had been we'd been meditating together. We'd done a tantra course together. We taught at a shamanic retreat. So we really started along a spiritual path together. He'd had visions of Mahāvata Babaji, and we were really on it was a really amazing ride. We travelled. We went on a pilgrimage over to Nepal, and he really opened my mind to the fact that there is an unseen reality that affects this reality. You know, that there is a spiritual world. And it's not just all we can see, hear, taste, touch and smell. There's a lot more going on. And we started to explore that non-physical reality together. But after he died, I was really angry with God. I was really angry with God. And I went along to do this course, which I put my heart and soul into. It was a shamanic retreat called Dying to Live. And during those 5 days, we stayed blindfolded and in silence, unless we were in the temple space. And then we did things like we wrote our will. We wrote letters of apology, or just letters about ourselves to children or whatever. Family members. We wrote our eulogy, and we basically prepared for our death, which was going to be on the Friday morning, which was a guided meditation. And I remember the word Antakarana, and I went way out in the cosmos, or way in that was the biggest spiritual experience I'd had at that time, way beyond anything else. And what I heard, I had a few things, but one of the things I heard was that it was time to start training with, and this is the only time I'm going to say this word, Louis Dompré. Now, he is the cult leader, and just refer to him as the cult leader from now on. And I had heard of him through I went to live in a town called Healesville, and through the people who I bought a house from, I'd heard of him. They were part of a spiritual group that was connected to an Indian guru, but also they were listening to teachings from other people, and at that time a cult leader was a trance channel. So I'd heard about him, but I hadn't met him. And when I got back from the Dying to Live course, man, I was squirting for days. I stayed naked. I was just so expanded in my consciousness. And when I got grounded and I got home, I called him and I told him what happened, and he said, come meet me in Auckland, New Zealand. This was 2000. He's having a millennium event, like a concert at a big hall or whatever, and he said, come over and meet him. So I went with my 2 children, and I met him, and at the end of that week, he said, come and train with me in Laguna Hills in California. So my mother offered to watch my 2 children, and I went off to the States, and in that month I was basically living in his home as a housekeeper, and so I'd shop and cook and help set up for events and keep the flowers in order, and there was this really sort of weird energy between us. Like, he was my guru, but there was this sort of other tension between us that was sort of like, it wasn't really sexual, because he's a repulsive guy. He's a little sort of dwarfish, like demon-y type guy, who had, by the way, been living as a gay man. So I was pretty confused. And at the end of that month, we went. About 20 of us went to Sedona for a retreat. There was a grand stellium and apparently powerful time. And on the last night we went to watch the sunset. We were sitting on the top of the rock, and as the sun was setting, he called me up, faced me to the west, and said, cast your deepest desire into the setting sun, which is to serve God. And then when I turned around, he's down on one knee and asked me to marry him. There were rose petals around, and people were blowing bubbles, and they were all in on it. And we were married. And I asked him about his homosexuality, and he said he'd healed all his issues. And so I went back to Australia and brought the children to the States, and we started our life in the ashram. We lived in a home on a cul-de-sac, and there were other homes in the surrounding towns. So there were about like 30 of us, I suppose. And there we were with this demon spawn who was proclaiming himself to be the second coming, the Kalki avatar, the Maitreya Buddha, the one everyone's been waiting for to come and save humanity. That's him. And we were all his disciples who were helping him with his mission. But we all needed a lot of healing because we were all so fucked up. So basically every day was some kind of like teaching or project or work that we had to do either on ourselves or for him. And his ministry, it was all about the ministry. And there really wasn't much time for anything else. People were kept busy. There were house meetings and women's meetings and men's meetings and partner meetings, and everyone had to come and clean the house on Saturdays, from 9 to 1 with swabs, cotton swabs, cleaning baseboards and shit. And even the kids had to do that. It was a full-time occupation. And then on Sundays we had disciple training, which was basically like 8 hours of crying and screaming while he helped everyone process their issues and their wounds and their emotions. But really everyone was just completely traumatized, and there was crying and screaming, and sometimes the neighbours called the police because of the hideous noises that were coming out of our house. It was so fucked up. You know, he wore robes and when we went out, and it was just really embarrassing for me and the children. And when we asked him, like, can you just wear street clothes to the the parent teacher meeting, he'd be like, oh, you're disrespecting me. And whenever I felt like there was an issue, he would always come back to well, I'm your guru, I know best, so like, just shut up and do it or whatever. And we consummated our marriage one time, just after I got back with my 2 older children, and I got pregnant. And once he found out I was pregnant, he never touched me again. He would put on all these public displays of like doing my nails and like he was a loving husband, but behind closed doors, he never touched me. And I lived a celibate. I was in a celibate marriage basically, and I just want to say that's sexual abuse. But meanwhile, he's fucking the guys in the cult, and he's grooming the boys, and he's got a whole lot of randoms going on too. Like, he's on dating apps, he's hooking up, he's going to Palm Springs, he's got a whole, he's living a full-blown promiscuous gay lifestyle, and I'm clueless. My gaydar was off. I did feel that something was wrong. Really deep down it was wrong, but I would override that with, well, it's just my issues. There's something wrong with me, there's something broken with me, and I'm here to heal that. It's a brilliant strategy to keep people under control. So the types of things that he did to really fuck with people were, he's an excellent gaslighter. Now, gaslighting is when someone does things to make someone else feel like they're going crazy, or they don't trust themselves, they don't trust their intuition, and they just feel like they're losing their shit. And that happened to me all day, every day. He would tell me that we had conversations that we never had, or that I'd agreed to something that I never agreed to. He was just pure evil towards my children to enrage me. He told them that I loved one of them more than the other, and of course he literally venerated our daughter. He said that she was the embodiment of Lord Ganesha. She was the remover of obstacles. Of course, he's Shiva and I'm Shakti, and we've got Ganesha who's going to remove all the obstacles. And so she was literally venerated, like put on he had his big chair in the lounge room with a picture above him, and she also was sitting in the chair and doing healings, and until I put a stop to it, it was really, really twisted. And that was a psychological operation that he had going for many years. What he also had going was, and I only found out this later too, was that he was grooming the boys in the cult. We found out that he's got other cults in other countries. I'm not sure where he's at now. He's still running his cult business, but I don't know how many people are still involved. But 15 years ago, he had cults in like Sydney and Melbourne and Auckland, and I think even in South Africa at some time. Anyway, there were 2 young boys at this time in the cult in Australia, and their aunt was the cult leader, and she's just as demonic as he is. And what they did to those boys, it was pure evil. They told them that they were gay. Like these twin brothers, they told them that they were gay from about the time they were 7, and the boys denied it vehemently, and they were punished. The sort of punishments were given out, like lines or loss of privileges, or loss of phones, or sleeping outside or whatever. And these boys continued to deny it, and when there was a retreat on in Australia, their aunt sent them into his bedroom, and they haven't spoken about what actually happened other than mentioned his erection and wanting to run out of the room. So they've been seriously damaged by their time in the cult, and they're really the only ones who are talking about the sexual abuse that happened in the cult. No other male cult members, and there must be like maybe, I don't know, 40. at least men who he's raped and sodomized, and none of them will speak up about it. That's how damaged they are. There are other cults where the cult leaders had a similar modus operandi, like that Buddha field cult. But there's been 2 documentaries made about that cult leader and the abuse that went on in the cult. There are plenty of cult members who are coming out and saying, hey, this guy's an evil piece of shit. That in the cult that I was in, no one is speaking out about it. I think I'm the first person to really tell the story, and it's important that I tell the story. So every day was hell, and I didn't know, I wanted to get out. I was really desperate. I would claw at my wrists. I still wanted to die, really, but I couldn't because I had children. And I didn't know how I was going to get out. I thought I would leave when the children left home. So I tried to get them to, go to boarding school, or to, go back to Australia, or just leave. But they didn't want to go. And my family were no help, although apparently my parents knew I was in a cult within the year of me leaving Australia. They never did anything together, but they went along to see this cult expert. I only found this out not that long ago. They went to see a cult expert. I don't know what he told them, but my parents never said anything to me, and none of my friends ever said anything to me. They all knew it, turns out later on, but no one ever said you're in a cult. It would have been helpful to have had that information, and also to be presented with information. Like, they could have got a private investigator and got photos of him, like hooking up with randoms, and the financial records, so I could see how much money he really was taking from people. Because to even be in his presence or attend any of his events, or be part of the ashram, people had to pay, or tithe, 10% of their gross income. So people worked outside the cult, and the money that they earned, he just then took 10%. And he also would take 10% of any gifts they received, inheritances, property sales. So he's still stealing money. That's how he still manages to live a fairly reasonably luxurious lifestyle, through theft. The children were going to school and doing their after-school activities like taekwondo and horse riding and dance. And I was writing a book, well, as mainly editing a book. It's my cult classic. It's called The Heart Always Knows, and it's under my cult name. Like, he gave me another name as well. It was Cosibella Christinas, and I changed it as soon as I got out of the cult. So I'm working on that book and just trying to bear through it, because he wouldn't let me. He wouldn't let me go. He wouldn't let me take our daughter, and I didn't want to leave her there. So 7 years into the marriage, my son came home from school one day, and he was such a bright light, but not this day. He was in a very dark place, and he didn't want to talk about it. So I said, why don't you, sleep on it and talk about it in the morning. Well, in the morning, he was getting ready to go on a ski trip, and then he disappeared. No one could find him. So we called around, looked around the neighborhood, and waited, and Saturday night went past and still he wasn't home. So on Sunday morning we reported him missing. And then that cult leader sent his assistant to look for my son in the land that's behind the house. It's a hill where those big electric wires are, so it's quite steep, and it's got a road that runs along the hillside. And that his assistant found my son, and he was found with his neck almost completely severed through to his spine, and one of the fucking kitchen knives next to his body. And that cult cunt told me, my other children, the other cult members, and the police that my son had taken his life because he found out he was gay. And that was unacceptable to him, and he knew that would be unacceptable to me, which are 3 heinous lies, like that evil, unsurpassed evil. He even outed him at his funeral, and people got up and walked out, because they knew what a lying this guy is, he's just a lying piece of shit. Was not very popular amongst most people outside of the cult. And I lost my mind. That's when I really, again, I won out. It was just excruciating. I thought I'd really done my dance with death when Barry passed away. But now my son was dead, and my eldest daughter went back to Australia to live with my family, and then I just had to get out of there, but he was refusing to let me leave with my daughter, like I said, and he had me both ways. He had me because I'm a mother, and he had me because I'm passionate about my spiritual path. It's my focus. And he was saying, you've worked like tens of thousands of lifetimes to be able to train here with me, and if you walk away from me, then you're turning your back on God, on your spiritual path, on your destiny. And I suppose I believed him. And then I went to see this guy who had been the cult therapist. There were a lot of other activities we had to do besides just all the ashram stuff, like that we had to go and see kinesiologists so we could keep our bodies strong, and we had to go and see a therapist. Actually, I didn't. I used to take every opportunity to be disobedient, which I was told was another reason why my son had taken his life, because I didn't give him the life that he'd asked for, or such a disobedient disciple. So I went to see this man, and when I walked into his office, he said, "I knew you'd come to see me. You know you're in a cult, don't you?" And I said, I didn't know I was in a cult. I thought I was in an ashram with my guru for spiritual training. And he said, "Go home and Google cult characteristics." So I did, and checked every single cult characteristic, and I knew I was in a cult. Blind obedience to a charismatic leader, love bombing followed by guilt shaming, and just verbal abuse, emotional abuse, gaslighting, psychological operations, lies and deception, punishments, all the tactics and techniques that a cult leader would use had been used on me. I was just such a prime candidate for cult programming. I was already extremely wounded from childhood, and then Barry's death. I was just fluffy bunny for the big bad wolf. Then I knew I had to get out, and I'm not sure why he let me take my daughter. I think it was because he knew he would have another death on his hands if he made me stay, because I wouldn't leave her. I wasn't going to leave her with that sick fuck in that situation. And I packed up and I left, and I moved to Hawaii, and that's where I've been ever since. And I've been focused on healing from the cult programming, the narcissistic abuse, and the brainwashing and mind control. And it's taken a long time, and I'm still working on stuff. What I realized was the reason why I had been susceptible to cult programming, and I'd been so easily led along this bizarre path, was because I lacked self-love. I didn't love myself. In fact, I hated myself. I felt really guilty. I felt bad. About what had happened in my life. And I knew I needed to work on that. So I did a lot of affirmations and self-care, and I ended up in relationships with 2 more narcissists. You know, it took a while because it was such a deep wound. It's still a work in progress. I'm still learning to love myself in more ways. But now I know that I've healed most of the lack of self-love because I'm in a relationship with a man who's not a narcissist. And once I also studied narcissism, narcissistic personality disorder, and codependency, because it's all well and good to be pointing out, oh, this person, my husband's a narcissist, or you know, my mother or father or boss or whatever. But the thing to do is that if you realize that you're in a relationship with a narcissist, is to know that you're either narcissistic yourself or else you're codependent. Both those conditions are due to lack of self-love. The narcissist will create a false persona and, you know, this whole like false reality so that they feel better. Someone who's codependent will look outside for love and try to get approval and affection and attention from other people. Narcissism is incurable. Codependency can be remedied. So I've been working on that as well since I left. In addition to the healing my emotional wounds, I did everything I could to expand my consciousness. I meditated, I studied esoteric wisdom, I used entheogens, like sacred plant medicines. I started sun gazing every day, every morning, so I get the pure light of God, like the highest information available. I get that into my eyes and through to my brain. That's the most powerful consciousness expander that anyone can do. I also deepen my connection with nature. I've been barefoot for years now, so I'm directly connected to Earth. And what happened was I was able to see more and more of the bigger picture of what had happened to me and then what was happening on the planet. And I met people who pointed me in the direction of like looking deeper into 9/11. And once I realized that that was an inside job, and yeah, the government is killing people, that took me down so many rabbit holes, and I could see that there is a conspiracy to enslave humanity, to make us sick and weak and slaves. I could see the same techniques that had been used on me in that cult on the cul-de-sac. I could see them being used on humanity. So what I experienced was a microcosm of the macrocosm. I can see the fear-based mind control, the brainwashing, the lies, the deceptions, the psyops, the savior programming. I could see that humanity was being totally fucked over. And then what I learned from my experience in the cult was that if you can see that someone's in a bad situation, in a cult, in a bad relationship, an abusive relationship, then it's good to speak up about that, because otherwise those situations continue and can get worse. You can save a life by speaking up. So I'm speaking up. Yes, there is a conspiracy too, and it's not even hidden anymore. It's out there in the open. It's extremely obvious when you're prepared to look at what is true and what's real, not what you want to be true or someone else wants you to believe, or other opinions from media or politicians or whatever. When we look at what's really true about what's going on in the world, then it's easy to see that we are being fucked over big time. That the systems that are in place that we think are just like a normal part of society, they're all being put in place to keep us under control, sick, disempowered, and to thwart our spiritual growth and evolution, and to send humanity into this transhuman agenda, this nightmarish future where we aren't free, we're not even really human anymore. And I'm not going to have it. Not on my watch. I'm going to do everything I can to ensure that that doesn't happen. And I'm not alone. There are countless beings of love and light who are here to support those of us who are the boots on the ground as we take a stand against the evil forces, the dark forces, the demonic entities, because they're everywhere. They're all filtered through all parts of society. But here's the thing that's really important to know, that there is a process going on at the moment. You may have heard of it, called like the Great Awakening or Ascension, Golden Age, the shift from the age of Pisces to the age of Aquarius. There's a shift going on in terms of energy, and the frequency of the vibration of the cosmos is increasing. And how that affects us is the light from the great central sun that comes through our sun has increased in intensity, which means that the vibrational frequency of everything and everyone has increased. And so everything of a lower vibration, all that, evildoers and their evil enterprises can no longer function when the frequency is at a higher level. And what we're seeing now is the end days of this. So it's a satanic blood cult. They're all about death, they're all about blood, they're all about pure evil. And because the frequency of light is increasing, their days are numbered, and they know it. So they're just like trashing the joint and extracting the most negative energy, which is their sustenance, from us. And they need us. They need us to exist, because and I don't know who they are exactly. It's a hierarchy. And what I do know is that there are minions that work through the systems of education, politics, finance, medicine, and government. There are minions that work to keep everyone under control and living this, I don't know, poor excuse for a life. Like, we are divine beings with infinite creative power, and we're living this like 9 to 5, a debt slave, grind until you die. Like, that's not how it should be. It's not how it should be, but it's not going to be how it is. At some point in time, when the frequency of light is high enough, and when enough people say no, we're not going to participate in these systems of enslavement, and live as sovereign beings, then humanity will be free, and we will be in a new earth, a new reality. That's what I'm looking forward to, and that's what I'm writing about. This is my first book, Putting on the Armour of God, a survival handbook for the Great Awakening in New Earth. And my next book is called New Human, New Earth, and in it I explain more about what's happening on Earth, how these systems coordinate to keep us ignorant of what's really going on, and to keep us really sick and disempowered. I talk about all the strategies that are used, including black magic, because we are up against black magicians. They are using demonic entities to do their bidding. Demons are real. Demonic possession is real. Like, that cult cunt he's got demons. His demons run his show. And I know how he got them. He was doing that, I don't know what you call that, really dark porn. And, he was open to demonic possession. And then when he was a channel, he was also had demonic entities coming to him. And now they run the show. They drive his sex addiction, his food addiction, his greed. You know, they run his lying tongue. And that's how one of the ways that these dark forces control people. That's why pedophilia is such a big deal, because when a child is like raped, that completely fractures the psyche and makes that child just broken and susceptible to manipulation and control. And it also actually just creates like a gateway for a demon to enter. That's what that does. When that sacred bond is penetrated and broken in a violent way, then that's a portal for demons. And I know that sounds weird, but it's true. That's what happens. You can see how demons drive demonic possession. So people who have lower vibrational frequencies, who have addictions, who have violent tendencies, who criminals, commit crimes. It's all driven by demonic entities. And the best protection is to keep your vibration high, keep your connection with God completely solid, and know and trust that you are protected. Because they're everywhere and they're just waiting for an opportunity to jump in and have their way. Create more suffering, create more pain, because that's what feeds them. And they're not even hidden anymore. It used to be like that was the conspiracy that's hidden in plain sight, but now they're doing public satanic rituals. You know, all those music concerts with all the famous singers. They're all just demon summoning rituals, halftime shows and Olympics ceremonies. They're all satanic rituals. Even hospital births and abortion and heel pricking children. There's so many satanic rituals that are just happening now that allow evil to continue, that strengthen evil and multiply evil. The other way that evil retains control, the evil entities control us, is through screens, particularly the television, the cell phone, the computer. But all those black screens allow black magic, because they use sounds, images, symbols, sigils, colours to mind control people. And now, instead of, this is particularly sad because of what's happening to children, now instead of relating to life through a connection with the natural world or other human beings or your intuition or to God, most people are relating to life through a screen, through a black screen, a black mirror. It's really demonic. And of course, the solution is to limit the time that one spends looking at a screen and spending more time doing human things, talking to other humans, looking humans in the face, doing good things with people, being out in nature, being with animals, being with children, being human. That's when we're most empowered, and that's when we cannot be compromised by evil. He's still operating as his cult. He still has people giving him money and bending over forwards for him. He's still sodomizing and just fucking randoms. He's got a Tinder, a Grindr account, WhatsApp, any of those hookups. He has hookups all the time, and what he does to explain his very ungodly, unholy, evil ways is he says he's the avatar who does everything differently, and his cult members just believe him. He's got people now who've been with him for nearly 25 years still believing his lies. I don't know what he's telling people now, why he hasn't come out to save the world since he's the second coming. Here's the funny thing though, he's actually the second coming out, because after I left, Well, I went from being the wife of Christ to the Antichrist, and he went to go on to be the second coming out again, because he's living his flamboyant gay lifestyle. I'm not going to go to the police. I can't get anyone to speak up with me. There's one other person, but everybody else just wants to move on with their lives. None of the men will speak up about the rapes that they endured. They're all so ashamed and so traumatized. There's another cult. The cult leader has a similar modus operandi. It's the Buddhafield cult, started in LA like this one, went to Austin in Hawaii, and he was fucking all the guys. Everyone thought, they all thought they had a special relationship with him, and meanwhile he's demanding everyone be celibate. And 2 documentaries have been made about him by ex-cult members exposing him. But this cult that I was in, okay, so it was a little bit smaller, but the fact is most people are so traumatized, so ashamed, so embarrassed that people just won't speak up. Except those 2 young men who were sexually abused, emotionally abused, physically abused in the cult in Australia. They've spoken up, and that's how I found out about what was happening with my son, that he was being groomed and his friends were being groomed. And my knowing is that my son was murdered to ensure that cult didn't get exposed as a pedophile, as a rapist, as a thief, and as a con man. So somehow, some way, he took my son out. He also, what happens with these servants of Satan, which he is, they sign a Faustian bargain, they give away their soul for whatever it is, fame, in the musical world, in the film industry, or in politics, or to amass a whole lot of money. They make a deal with the devil so they get what they want, but they sell their souls. Now he sold his soul, and one of the ways that they that person keeps their power is to do a sacrifice. And my son was his sacrifice so he could keep his power over people. And he's already in hell. The fact is, narcissists already live in hell. But that, narcissistic cult leader, he lives in hell every day. He's not free. He knows what he's done, and he has to lie and manipulate and steal and keep that going. And he's chasing anal sex. That's his main focus. So that's enough punishment for me. I'm free. I'm free from suffering. I live surrounded by nature. I'm enjoying my life. And he is living in hell. So I don't feel the need to bring about a legal case. Besides, that would cost a shit ton of money, take a shit ton of time, or mean I'd have to engage with him. And I do not want to engage with him at all. So I'm just have to live with the knowing that my son was murdered, and I know who the murderer is, even though he may not have had his hand on the knife. He had a hand in it. And that he's suffering every day because of it. Another thing that I learned after I escaped the cult was about Satanism, which is service to self, and about the satanic inversion principle, which is the how everything's flipped upside down. So good becomes evil, light becomes dark, left becomes right, medicine becomes poison, government becomes tyrants, and on it goes. And I learn about natural law, which is inherent in creation. And it's important to understand that there are laws that govern the universe. There are principles, and that when we live in alignment with those principles, we're living in alignment with divine grace and with truth and with harmony, and that's where we're heading. We are, as a species, we're moving out of the fear-based reality, out away from the satanic inversion principle, and we're going towards or back to a love-based reality where we're all living according to natural law. It's been a long journey and it's continuing. So thank you for listening, and thank you for your contribution to the freedom and future of humanity. Thank you for all that you're doing to be a light, be a beacon of light, to share truth. And I'm sending you all my love and light, and know and trust that love always wins. Thank you.